Psychobabble vs. Common Sense Wisdom 1. Chapter 1. Happiness comes from being as pure as you can be. The best way anyone can possibly live. 1. The biggest problem with human beings is not lack of money or love. You're like a bird with a broken wing. You have a song but do not sing. The best way anyone can possibly live is by their own natural purity, by your own true nature, but most of us can't because we have to live in the capitalist world to earn money to pay our bills, which saps our natural free spirits until we end up shells of the natural inspired kids we were at one time. We sell our souls to the artificial values of the system. You're not doing what you want to do because you lack courage. You're probably working a crappy job for the money or being a lazy couch potato, not doing much of anything besides watching a screen, eating junk food or doing frivolous stuff. Our model for helping people with personal problems is to get students to study psychology at college and tell them they have a system for understanding human behavior where they put people into categories, give them drugs and probe their pasts in endless therapy sessions. These college students then become our experts to supposedly help people. Psychology and mental health are capitalist industries geared for profit and growth. Their ultimate big idea is to fool people into thinking they have a mental illness and need their services. Plenty of wimps line up because they do not want to take responsibility for their lives the way their God created them to be, living their lives freely away from everyone else's lies. This is the brainwashed elitism we live under. Most of us are sheep buying into this fraud. I got no problem with the early guys who wrote essays off the tops of their heads trying to help people like Benjamin Franklin with his 13 virtues, which are 1. Temperance, 2. Silence, 3. Order, 4. Resolution, 5. Frugality, 6. Industry, 7. Sincerity, 8. Justice, 9. Moderation, 10. Cleanliness, 11. Tranquility, 12. Chastity, 13. Humility. You can go on YouTube and listen to one of the first self-help books from 1905. The Science of Getting Rich audiobook by Wallace D. Wattles. Add Dante Alighieri's 7 Deadly Sins from the Divine Comedy and you pretty well got all the common sense you need. Pride, lust, gluttony, greed, sloth/laziness, anger, jealousy. All the wisdom you need is in our biblical books of Proverbs and Ecclesiastes, but people think they're old. All the crap written since then about life still does not hold a candle next to the wisdom in these 2 books, except for my insight, which is that I'm a loner with a true nature. Screw the world with its bullshit. I have to earn a living but won't sell my soul to any bullshit in the world. Our idiots had to make a science out of life and created businesses in all the social science departments in all the 9,600 four-year colleges and universities in the world. They say whatever any individual thinks is irrelevant. You have to be able to measure it, so now the APA, American Psychological Association, has got 56 subcategories and there are at least 1,000 psychology academic journals in existence, and it's all 100% bullshit because nobody knows what's going on in the mind of another human being, and nobody should be so arrogant as to think they do unless somebody comes to you looking for help. Then talk one-on-one as a loving friend, not a phony clinical or educational psychologist trying to put them into some category you learned from some BS place. Don't use their bullshit theories because they're meaningless. Don't use their categories in the DSM, Diagnostic Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, because they are no real mental illnesses. Whatever problem any individual has is their own unique problem in the unique situation they're living in. Having a group of several one-size-fits-all mental illnesses is the supermarket approach to helping someone with a generic formula. A true helper tries to understand his friend and offers thoughtful ideas and advice. A lot of people line up to be diagnosed with a fictitious mental illness because they're wimps. They do not want to face themselves head on. The best way anyone can possibly live to life is right now. That's it. You create yourself by the way you live right now. It's always the same thing. You're either inspired, active and happy, mundane and average, scared and negative, Before I majored in psychology at college, I was a brainwashed boob like most people, thinking that people with titles like psychiatrist, psychologist, psychotherapist, etc. had some advanced, authoritative, scientific insight into human life. I studied the whole thing and saw they had three big unrelated theories. Psychoanalysis, your past determines you now. Behaviorism, you're an empty slate living by the rewards and punishments of your environment. Humanism, flowery bullshit about being a noble human being trying to reach your potential. I don't give a crap about my past. I don't give a crap about my environment/society except to earn enough money to do my own thing. Where are the noble human beings? Many people are slobs addicted to something, be it food, porn, or drugs and alcohol. Many people work mundane jobs then chase them away with as many frivolous pursuits as possible. Watching TV is still king, although video games come a close second. I realized that this social science stuff is a load of crap with a bunch of unrelated one-liner advice and no simple big insight into life. I discovered my simple big insight into life on my own. I first unloaded all my early brainwashing into thinking that people called life experts, psychologists, psychiatrists, etc. had authoritative knowledge in life. I was brought up on old science fiction horror movies which routinely used psychiatrists as characters, like Spellbound, 1945, and Marcus Welby MD, a 1960s TV show where Dr. Welby recommended some of his patients go see a psychiatrist or a psychologist. This use of these experts implanted an idea into me as a kid that any boob called a psychiatrist or psychologist had some advanced insight into human life, but as an adult I realized all that anyone does who studies the stuff is take a bunch of unrelated courses that all together amount to no true insight into life. It's just a bunch of meaningless unrelated junk, but they can't admit it to themselves because to do this would make them admit they're living a lie, deny them of their cash cow and the status that goes along with the job titles of psychiatrist and psychologist. It's one of the massive lies of the modern world. Most people buy into the lie that there is a science of human behavior called psychology, or the entire social sciences for that matter, that has insight into life. Their power is the same as the power that a witch doctor, a shaman, a pharaoh, or a sorcerer had in the past, the same power that the Wizard of Oz had, an illusion that they have some kind of mystical, divine advanced knowledge and are smarter than everyone else. Most people do not bother to study all this stuff like I did. Most people are massively brainwashed by this idea that the fields of psychology and psychiatry are legitimate fields of advanced knowledge about life. Anyone who calls themselves a psychologist or psychiatrist and pretends to know deep, advanced stuff about life is a liar and a scam artist. Every individual is a loner with their own reality. Most people get brainwashed by the world and follow its artificial values to some extent. The only enlightened people realize they have a true nature given by God at birth. Their only purpose in life is to know this true nature, then have the courage to live by it by releasing the natural energy they feel within themselves most days when they get up, barring a few rest days here and there. Beyond that, no one knows what anyone else is thinking, and no one will until we evolve to telepathy, so stop being a busybody trying to figure other people out, trying to know what they're thinking. If you think you know and press them on it, most will never admit to anything because they got egos. Everybody is protecting themselves. Some are playing one-upmanship games with others, but no one will ever admit to it, so I don't try to analyze people. I just try to be straight, polite, and friendly and leave it at that. That's it. Many people have studied ancient history, the paranormal and religion looking for the answers to the deepest questions of life. At the end of the day, we got several thousand people who claim to have had near-death experiences, we got some people who claim to have been possessed by demons and were exorcised, and we got some strange events that could have been faked or true. I saw a video of scratches appearing on a guy's body in real time claiming he was possessed. Many of us want a supernatural afterlife, but all I know for sure is to live bravely and die bravely. According to the Penn and Teller Showtime TV show Bullshit, Gandhi and Mother Teresa were selfish fakes. The Dalai Lama presents himself as a smiling, happy guy, but within the Buddhist culture, Monks are the elitists at the top, living lives of luxury while everyone else worship them and gives them money. You can't righteously put people into categories, but the psychobabble industry does, and most people buy into it because they're brainwashed wimp victims. Many people want to be diagnosed with a mental illness to take the responsibility for their lives away from themselves and blame it on some fake idea that's beyond their control. We can't admit that anyone who analyzes their life and concludes I have a true nature that I will live by is more enlightened than anything any human being has ever created about life in all those social science courses at college. We can't admit that a self-aware person who has compassion for others is a much better counselor than any boob with a bunch of degrees who pretends to be wise and hides behind a bunch of meaningless psychobabble, then diagnoses drugs to boot, not to mention that they often implant false memories and ideas by trying to string a patient along for many therapy sessions to make money, probing their past, which means nothing. All that means anything is your state of being right now, either naturally inspired, following the world's artificial values, couch potato. There are no great theories of life that are going to make someone happy forever. Everything is momentary. You're either inspired, know how to live an inspired life and do it, or you're mundane. The best you can do in life is know you're a loner soul just like everyone else, a loner with your own essence known to no one but you. You will never know another human being on a profound intimate level, so don't be nosy. Don't pry. Don't overestimate romantic love. It's a temporary spray of hormones that dies down. If you want true unconditional love, love animals, or love God, some supernatural character that is always available in your imagination. Know your soul, true nature, or essence and live by it. Do that by striving to release your natural energy almost every day, barring rest days, to match an inner standard you should feel given by your creator at birth that tells what you should do and need to do. Follow this inner voice to be the natural you. Try not to live by the artificial values of the capitalist pop culture psychobabble matrix with the system imposing its ideas on you. You have to earn money to pay your way, but beyond that, you don't have to buy into the government as some force over you, the lies they teach in school, the news, the ideas of coolness, fashion, social norms, or psychobabble. The worst you can do is to waste your life on meaningless stuff like sitting around watching frivolous stuff on a screen, trying to be cool or get attention from other people, living for your ego, how you think others see you, being addicted to some negative stuff like drugs, alcohol, food, home decor, etc. If you want to help someone, the best you can do is to help them one by trying to be a true friend, not putting them into some fraudulent category created by the system, then giving them mental health drugs. Almost all problems of the mind are problems of the spirit. A few people get hit in the head or negatively impact their organic brain chemistry with drugs, alcohol, and bad living, but most mental problems are the result of living a wimpy, weak life. You create your own biology. Your brain deteriorates if you're a mundane nobody not doing anything inspired. It takes courage to analyze your life, then live by it, to follow the narrow road of doing what you feel you should by an inner righteous standard. Sociology is the fictional field or pretending to study entire societies. There are not two people anywhere that truly know each other. How can you possibly study entire societies? You can't measure mental illness or study people en masse. If you want to help somebody, be a true friend rather than a phony expert on a high horse. Don't blame society. It is what it is. People have had to work for others ever since the first Egyptian pharaoh decided to build a city with slave labor. It's not society's fault. Get a job. Pay your way. Don't blame your wimp life on the environment. What's the stress? All you need is a basic roof over your head and enough money for food. Everything else is your ego. If you want to get into a relationship, then think you own other human beings, it's ego. Do you watch TV, see all the high frivolous living there, then get jealous? That's ego. Live by your soul. The mental health system makes loads of money from the criminal justice system. It's all bull. Everyone is responsible for their evil actions. Do something evil, you're accountable and sane enough to stand trial. All this BS about not being responsible for committing a crime because of psychobabble. We live in an upside-down society. Cases in point of famous people duped by the mental health industry are: Brian Wilson, mind-controlled by a psychologist for 10 years who controlled his life and money. Roseanne Barr, accusing her father of molesting her, which was false. Margaret Trudeau, claiming she was diagnosed with bipolar illness in the 1970s, blaming her personal weakness as a human being on this bullshit these phony experts told her. If you're busy doing something positive and inspired, you can't be sad or stressed. If you're active, busy, or otherwise inspired, you can't feel sad, bad, or mentally ill. Stress goes away as soon as somebody starts to get occupied in work. I read an old self-help book. I think it was written by Dale Carnegie. He said as soon as somebody starts working on anything positive and purposeful, they automatically start to feel good. This is too simple for the mental health industry. They keep people cooped up, talking about nothing in particular in therapy sessions, taking drugs rather than going outside, being active in some way. An idle mind is the devil's playground is not specifically in the Bible. It is an English proverb. Similar statements in the Bible are as follows. 1 Corinthians 15:58. Therefore, my beloved brethren, be steadfast, immovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, knowing that your toil is not in vain in the Lord. We should always be busy doing what's right. Ephesians 4:28. Idle men were often spoken of as insolent and lawless, and were used by God's enemies to form mobs to attack others. Judges 9:4, Acts 17:5, Proverbs 15:2. Those who are idle, having no purpose and nothing to do, can get themselves into trouble. 1 Timothy 5:13. Not merely idle, but also gossips and busybodies, talking about things not proper to mention. 2 Thessalonians 3:11. Philippians 4:8. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Whatever you have learned or received or heard from me, or seen in me, put it into practice. And the God of peace will be with you. Colossians 3:2, Galatians 5:22. Where does poverty fit into being troubled or mental health? Out of all the courses I ever took in psychology and all the psychology textbooks I scanned, I barely remember anyone talking about poverty or the need to pay bills all the time to keep a roof over your head as a major cause of stress or mental turmoil, but it has got to be one of the biggest sources of mental problems of all. Almost everybody worries about money. TV is gloss. It's not the real world. The real world everywhere is a tough economy. Gas is expensive. Automation and artificial intelligence continue to eliminate jobs, yet the science of psychology barely acknowledges the constant push for money as one of the biggest problems of life. I especially feel bad for young people where I live. The vacancy rate is down to nothing. They have to pay $1,000 a month just for a roof over their head. They will not have the freedom to explore their lives like the easy economy I lived through during the 1980s and 1990s. Poverty causes many suicides. People kill themselves before going homeless. If you really want to help people, you had better look at the basics of practical living before these high-minded ideas of diagnosing someone with a fictitious mental illness then putting them on drugs and therapy. Let's focus on getting people a place to live, then give them something useful to do, like a job that makes them feel purposeful. Religion vs. Psychology for mental health. Religions try to provide morals, community, compassion, love, and kindness to help people. Psychology calls itself a science patterned after the medical industry, which is to create a bunch of specific mental illnesses, then treat them by talking to a therapist and taking mental health drugs. What is life? You're a spirit with some manner of true nature or essence. You live alone in your own head. Sometimes people can help you and give you love when you're down. Some people claim to give life advice. Some people claim to benefit from such advice. You wake up every morning by yourself. Your holy book or therapist are not there. It's just you alone. You either make peace in your mind on your own or you don't. Many people have the holy book and the church community close by for support. To the therapist, you're one of many clients. They see you for less than an hour a week. There is no true intimacy there, just some kind of clinical bullshit. They claim you got a mental illness, and if you believe them, they got power over you. If you feel tired or troubled, rest. Figure it out on your own. Mental problems due to toxic people. Many people are in bondage to others, like children with rotten parents. A bad marriage, one person is abusing the other or both fight each other all the time. A toxic boss being demeaning because he holds the job over you. Trivial, bickering people anywhere who play own-upmanship games and want to make the people around them miserable. They get joy out of controlling others and making them feel bad. A lot of people are perfectly healthy and fine, but they have a relative who thinks they own them or tries to make them feel guilty. It's an epidemic everywhere that no one talks about. I heard many stories of children being brought up by abusive parents at unshackled.org or the Unshackled stories on YouTube. If you're a kid with a nasty parent, tell the people at school. If they don't do anything, call the cops, tell them you're not safe living with the parent. If they try to send you back later, refuse. Tell them you would rather live in foster care. If you're afraid because you got a nasty husband who earns the money, it's better to be free, earning your own money. You don't have to be abused by anyone. Toxic people never stop. Once a bully thinks you're his doormat, he won't stop. It always ends in disaster. Stand on your own. Regular partying, as in using alcohol and drugs, is not healthy. I used to think alcohol and drugs were fun. I did a bunch, then got tired of them by the time I was 27. I rarely touched them again because I couldn't get high, because I didn't want to get high anymore. I felt good straight. Booze or drugs couldn't take me to a magical place, so I stopped using them totally. As life went on, I saw people around me continue to use. Some of them couldn't stop. It gets worse than alcoholism and drug addiction. Some people can't hold down jobs. Dumb people become criminals to fund their addictions. Some become abusive, nasty, and violent. At one time, I thought drugs should be legal in a free country, but they cause so much devastation that it's not worth it. When the Brits dumped a bunch of opium into China, they created millions of hobo drug addicts. If you need drugs or alcohol, I say it's a negative problem that leads to other problems. A mentally healthy person does not need this stuff. Chapter 2. An Enlightened Life Guide. Enlightened Thinking 1. In this lifetime, you got nothing to prove to anyone but yourself. The 1993 move Rudy, near the 90-minute mark. Everybody is a loner living alone in their own heads. Even the closest among us are universes apart. If you want to help someone, you do it one-on-one, individual to individual in the present moment. That's it. Everything else is human arrogance, like all those categories they put people into through that fiction called the DSM, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. A bunch of weak people buy into it and want to be taken care of by the system, so they embrace the phony therapies and the so-called mental health drugs. People want the snake oil because they don't want to stand alone and live their lives by whatever they feel within themselves, given by the divine spirit that created them. People can get hit in the head and have a traumatic brain injury. They can take lots of drugs and alcohol that deteriorate the brain, or stress can wear out the brain and cause deep cynicism, but other than that, rare are very few people that start out with something wrong in their organic brains that makes them troubled, weird, or psychotic. Most people start out normal. Some criminals or evil people are born that way, some become that way because of the environment they're raised in. There is proof on both sides. I've known blue blood guys who couldn't conform and be good. There are very few truly crazy people. Most are just selfish, manipulative people crazy like a fox. I used to babysit a kid about 5 years younger than me. His temper tantrums were a ploy to get what he wanted. He became a cook as an adult. He seems normal. If somebody is a danger to others, lock them up. If they're not, nobody can really help them with whatever is going on in their heads. Life is your own spirit and willpower to help yourself or not. That's it. You either solve your own problems on your own in your own head or live as a tortured wimp in some way. Everybody has to live their lives alone. Feel your essence or soul, then live by it to the best of your ability in a world that is trying to indoctrinate you everywhere. E. E. Cummings said, "It takes courage to grow up and become who you really are. To be nobody but yourself in a world which is doing its best day and night to make you like everybody else means to fight the hardest battle which any human being can fight and never stop fighting. Follow moral rules and don't break laws, but beyond that, it's all someone else's BS. If you want to feel alive, do some hard physical activity outdoors. That's always a challenge. You feel good after you do it because you've earned self-respect. They try to get you to defer to the system over yourself in grade school. Most people sell their souls to the system's fake knowledge. That's why they're miserable. They're not following their true natures. A guy by the name Alan Watt on YouTube and cuttingthroughthematrix.com, who is now deceased, said they try to get you to defer to all the phony experts out there over trusting yourself. This is some kind of big mind control thing for modern day society. They even got experts to help you clean the clutter in your closets. The system has cut us off from our true natures by creating a bunch of phony knowledge out there, trying to fool us into thinking it knows more than we as individuals know about our lives and other people in general. Nobody has the goods on anyone else's life, and nobody ever will until we master telepathy. Life is human alone. You create everything you do or don't do. No one can get in your head 24/7 and inspire or motivate you or do the opposite, try to make you feel small by bullying you. Enlightenment is to discover your God-given nature and live by it by releasing that energy God gave you day by day, as opposed to getting sucked in by the world and following its artificial values. Know your life force, release it all the time and keep it as strong as you can until you pass. There's the life coach BS, these arrogant asses proclaiming themselves as advanced people who can help you for a high fee. I saw a 23-year-old on a TV show with the title of life coach, claiming to have advanced knowledge that can help people much older than her. Stories like The Wizard of Oz, The Emperor's New Clothes and 1984 were created to tell the people that the big lie we live under is that there is some authoritative system out there that knows deep, advanced stuff that we, ordinary people, don't know, so we had better listen, go to school, believe what we're told, then become good system clones. It's control. Since the beginning of humanity, people got together and formed governments not for the good of the people but to control them. There are no benevolent governments anywhere. We haven't solved poverty and homelessness after 200 years of democracy in the US. They suck what they can out of the people in taxes and laws. If you want to know about the income tax fraud and why you're a wage slave, try these terms online. Fractional reserve banking. Bill Still Money Masters fraud. Paul Hellyer Money Masters fraud. G. Edward Griffin Money Masters fraud. Enlightened thinking 2. Mental health professionals and humanities/liberal arts professors pretend they have advanced answers to life, but God made everyone with normal intelligence with the potential to reach the highest level of enlightenment, which is to know your own purity as an individual. They categorize children into special education classes. Most adults are brainwashed by this fraudulent system too. The infrastructure of our modern, Western society is screwed, selling us into this crap, including chemical prescription drugs over herbs and traditional medicine. Many couples, who are supposedly intimate soulmates, barely have a superficial knowledge of each other, yet we got a bunch of nerds pretending they have a good knowledge of the entire human condition. Joseph Campbell, a guy interested in mythology who never got a PhD in anything, cracked the universal story of enlightenment, which he called the hero's journey. The hero goes out into the world with his or her ideas, delusions of grandeur, good intentions, and naivete, is slapped around, beaten up, abused and exploited by disgusting people, then rises from the ashes like the phoenix, saying, "Screw you world, I got my own soul and true nature given by the God who created me. I will live by that for the rest of my life. I will be my own hero and live to release the natural energy from my soul. Everything in school except for the 3 R's, some science, math, logic and practical skills is someone else's bullshit. Mental health drugs are massive fraud. You will never solve a problem of the human spirit with drugs. Nobody has telepathic powers, the ability to know what someone else is thinking or feeling, so how could any righteous person pretend to have deep, advanced insights about the mass sea of humanity and present themselves as superior sages? Back in my day when I was a kid in the 1960s, it was obvious who was a mentally challenged child. They had real organic brain dysfunctions. Nowadays, they're diagnosing a lot of kids as learning disabled to get extra funding for their school. They have formalized the mental health system so that it parallels the conventional medical system, which is full of fraud too. They got the whole mental health thing covered by health insurance, so it's easy to get a referral by a medical doctor, then go to some modern-day witch doctor called a psychiatrist. If you think of it as a capitalist for-profit venture, it's easy to see that some, not all, medical doctors and mental health professionals are in it for the money. They want new patients to make money from. They don't care how fraudulent they are. You can look up Farid Fattah, the oncologist who was falsely diagnosing people with cancer to make money. PTSD is overblown fraud. It used to be called shell shock. You go to war, you're traumatized, but after a few weeks of rest, if you're still laying around claiming to be mentally ill, it's your fault for being a wimp, for not having the willpower to get up and live a normal active life. The people of every war and disaster up until recently had no choice but to struggle and move ahead or wither and die, but now they say your wimpy character is not your fault. It's a disease, something in your brain beyond your control. For thousands of dollars covered by health insurance, we can hold your hand, pretend to be your friend and pretend to help. Big Pharma had to get in on the action, creating all kinds of drugs to try to raise dopamine levels in the brain. Why don't you just go for a walk or do what inspires you? It's a lot better than taking some poisonous drug with all their side effects. I saw the CBS 60 Minutes show with Kitty Dukakis acting as the cheerleader for electroshock therapy to help her deal with depression. The world has gone mad when human beings are so sad that they line up to get electricity zapped through their brain that will kill brain cells and erase some memory permanently. Only you can create your own natural joy or be a sniveling, pathetic wimp. That's about it. It's all up to you, like old man Robert Schuller used to say with his religious self-help shtick. Every human being lives alone in their own heads. They either have the internal strength to live as they are by nature or betray themselves and live sniveling lives. Enlightened Thinking 3. I am my own being. I love my life. I hold it sacred. I won't give it up to some BS out there trying to pretend it's more advanced than me about the human condition. God gave me everything I am. I don't need massive bull trying to separate me from my God-given soul, pretending they got some advanced hocus-pocus psychobabble voodoo on me that I'm supposed to defer to and say, "You wise, superior people. You know more about my life than me. I defer to you, my masters. You're going along living your life hurting no one, then some counselor at school or work pretending to be an advanced sage comes up and says you got a mental illness. You don't fit into our standards of normality. It's a way to control people you don't like or people who are too individual for the system and don't want to listen to the conformist BS, like in school with ADHD, dyslexia, oppositional defiant disorder, and all that other garbage. School is actually an artificial system imposed over natural free children. If you look at it that way, we're imposing on children's freedom in some way. School is good to a point but bad when it indoctrinates people to an artificial way of life. You got these college psychology departments around the world all pretending to do research on the human condition. How much research can you do? Life is very simple. Americans never used to commit suicide much. Now all of a sudden, they pump all these vets up with drugs and they're committing suicide en masse, blaming it on PTSD. I blame it on the drugs they give them. Many drugs have weird side effects like psychotic thinking. How many killers are on mental health drugs? They hardly ever link evil acts with mental health drugs on the news. The big drug companies spend lots of money on advertising. On a true cop show, some guy on mental health drugs was on the roof of his house because he thought people were out to kill him. Psychologists play a mind game with some people to try to get them to feel bad about themselves based on their past or bad things they might have done so that they can get these patients hooked on getting them to come to more therapy sessions to make money. Some psychologists abuse their power. They get a power trip out of dealing with patients. A few abuse them sexually. I don't only think that the mental health industry is a lie. I think it's a crime against humanity for letting therapists mess with weak people. There has got to be a more honest, simpler way to help people. Proverbs 18:14 says the spirit of a man will sustain his infirmity, but a wounded spirit who can bear, which means that your spirit will either make you or break you. It's just you making or breaking your life. There is no subconscious mind, some hidden part of you. When you dream a bunch of random, ridiculous stuff that has no relevance to your life. Your life starts when you wake up and think, then act or lay in bed like a wimp. Sometimes when you're thinking about something and go to sleep, your brain figures it out in a dream while you sleep, but that's not a subconscious mind. It's incubation, relaxed thinking, letting your intuition figure things out like I do when I go for a long walk. I daydream. I let my free flow of thoughts go. The mental health, psychology, psychiatry are for-profit industries geared to make money. They started with good intentions, but the road to hell is paved with good intentions. There are bona fide good, helpful people in these fields, but most are trivial brainwashed clones hiding behind the phony legitimacy of the formal mental health psychology credential, acting as pushers for their big daddies, the drug companies. Whatever happened to love, compassion and kindness, talking to someone as an individual straight from the natural feelings in your soul? They replaced it with a huge matrix of crap that is broad enough to diagnose anyone with some mental illness, then start making money off them with fake therapy and drugs. Enlightened thinking 4. I've read life improvement books as far back as 1850 at Gutenberg.org. In the beginning, some good people tried to understand life and write advice to help others, but the publishing industry got a hold of this idea and have never stopped creating new self-help books all the time to make money, not necessarily to help people. If they wanted to sincerely help people, they would publish truth as censored by any normal intelligent person's BS meter. P.T. Barnum's adage says there's a sucker born every minute, which extends to people feeling confused about life, but there is nothing complicated about human life, and there never will be, despite how much technology of the mind any con artist claims to come up with. You were born a pure baby like any animal, with a true nature. That's all you will ever own in life. All the bullshit in this artificial world called society will keep coming at you every day. If you lose a hold of who you really are, you will betray yourself, and this will cause most of the problems you have in your mind, body, and soul. Will I be the hero of my own life or be a wimp? David Copperfield, Charles Dickens. Will I be the one in the arena, giving it all I got, or one of the huddling masses of spectators? Theodore Roosevelt. Will I go gently into that good night or rage for my life? Dylan Thomas. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly,
so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. Theodore Roosevelt, 1910.